Now, Tom Sowell, the great Tom Sowell, writing in the Washington Examiner about the EPA, says despite the old saying, don't cry over spilled milk, the EPA is doing exactly that. We all understand why the EPA was given the power to issue regulations to guard against oil spills, such as the Exxon Valdez in Alaska, or the more recent BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. But not everyone understands that any power given to any bureaucracy for any purpose can be stretched far beyond that purpose. You ready for this one? Saul writes, in a classic example of this process, the EPA has decided that since milk contains oil, that the EPA, has the authority to force farmers to comply with new regulations, to file emergency management plans, to show how they will cope with spilled milk, how farmers will train first responders, quote unquote, and build, quote, containment facilities, unquote, if there is a flood of spilled milk. Since there is no free lunch, all of this is going to cost the farmers both money and time that could be going into farming, and is likely to end up costing consumers higher prices for farm products. It's going to cost the taxpayers money as well, since the EPA is going to have to hire people to inspect farms, inspect farmers' reports, and prosecute farmers who don't jump through all the right hoops if they've spilled milk. All of this will be creating jobs, of course. If the tax money removed from the private sector correspondingly reduces the jobs that can be created there in the private sector. Does anyone seriously believe that any farmer is going to spill enough milk to compare with the Exxon Valdez oil spill or BP oil spill? Do you envision people fleeing their homes as a flood of milk comes pouring down the mountainside, threatening to wipe out the village below? It doesn't matter. Once the words are in the law, it makes no difference what the realities are. The bureaucracy has every incentive to stretch the meaning of those words in order to expand its empire. Saul says, look at the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. It has expanded its definition of discrimination to include things that no one thought was discrimination when the Civil Rights Act was passed in 1964. The FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, is trying to expand its jurisdiction to cover things that were never included in its jurisdiction and that have no relationship to the reason why the FCC was created in the first place. Yet the ever-expanding bureaucratic state has its defenders in the mainstream media. When Obama recently mentioned the possibility of reducing burdensome regulations as part of his moving of his rhetoric toward the political center, even if his policies don't move, there was an immediate reaction to the New York Times article defending government regulations. Under a headline that said, Obama may find useless regulations are scarcer than he thought, the Times writer declared that there were few, if any, useless regulations. Is there any individual business willing to spend money on everything that is not absolutely useless? There are thousands of useful things out there that any given individual business would not spend their money on. He said, when I had young children, I often thought it would be useful to have a set of the Encyclopedia Britannica for them, but I never bought one. Why? Because there were other little things to spend money on, like food, clothing, and shelter. By the time I could afford to buy a set of the Encyclopedia Britannica, the kids were grown and gone, but in no time did I consider the Encyclopedia Britannica useless. Weighing benefits against costs is the way most people make decisions, and the way most businesses make decisions if they want to stay in business. Only in government is any benefit, however small, considered to be worth any cost, however large. And I would add to that, because it's not their cost, it's ours. The people they regulate, the victims. That's right, we're victims. So we're going to regulate you dairy farmers now in Washington, people who probably have never touched an udder. And I haven't, and I'm thankful, but I'm not trying to regulate you either. Poor farmers, what are they going to do to farming in this country? They're going to be attacked on the milk, on the methane of livestock, on dust. Ladies and gentlemen, this is really, really serious. We are a motivated people, a vibrant people. We're productive. And yet we have a government that wants to make us poor. A government that wants to distract us from what we want to do to fill out their paperwork and meet all their requirements. We're going to have food shortages in this country thanks to these fools. We're going to have fuel shortages in this country thanks to these fools. And we're going to have endless soup lines, endless unemployment as we have now because of these rules by people we are actually paying to put us out of business, people we are actually paying to drive up our costs, people we are actually paying to make it more difficult to get access to energy and food. What kind of suicide pact is this anyway? I didn't sign on to this, did you? And by the way, over at our Facebook, Fran Hopkins has a good point. The first responders to a giant milk spill, a throng of thirsty cats.